The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Golenbock University. I'm Ralph Tyko of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. The host of Golenbock University is the professor himself, Peter Golenbock. How are you, sir?
Everybody?
Yeah, we have a guest tonight, a fellow podcaster of mine on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and an all-around good guy living in Tampa, Yankee fan, Jack Degraw. How are you, Jack?
How's everybody doing tonight?
We could not be better. We were just talking a little off the air about how Tampa's team,
Tampa Bay's
is
not Tampa,
is very much like the Oakland A's, where I live in close proximity. I'm in Alameda. Right across the moat is Oakland, and we are pleasant. Both of us, Peter, are pleasantly surprised by both teams.
Absolutely. I really thought. No, I thought the Rays, after the first 2 weeks, were going to lose 110, 115 games, and then they got rid of everybody, and they brought in all these kids, people we've never ever heard of, and these kids turned out to be spectacular baseball players. And right now, rooting for the Rays is just an ecstasy. It's not even a pleasure; it's an ecstasy. These guys playing so well right now.
Now, do you think they were playing over their heads, or do you think they can maintain it?
No, I do not think they're playing over their heads. We had a week where we played the Yankees, and then we played Washington, and then we played Houston. And we went 8-1 against those teams. And it was totally unexpected. It was, we just sat there with our mouths open. It was so spectacular. And the young kids, people you never heard of, they're just a bunch of rookie pitchers who throw 95 miles an hour. One guy's name is Wood. One guy's name is Schmidt. There are 3 or 4 more of them. They're just spectacular. They weren't spectacular today, but
Panic and Snell among those guys.
Snell's a starter. I'm not even talking about Snell. Snell is a guy we expected to do well. Snell and Archer and the ex-Yankee starter. What the hell is his name?
Eovaldi.
Yeah, Eovaldi. Those guys expected them to do well, but the rest of the staff, people you never heard of, just magnificent. These kids.
Yeah. Hate to break it up by talking about business a little bit. Can you guys address the stadium issue that you have going?
Yeah, go. You go first.
Jack.
Go ahead, Jack.
Okay. Well, I know they had an announcement on Tuesday, and I guess the stadium is going to cost $862 million. I'm not really sure, but it just seems to me. Now there's nothing wrong with the Trop.
Correct.
And I lived in Tampa, and I always heard when I first moved here in 2004 how the Trop was a terrible stadium and it was hard to get there, and neither of that is true.
Exactly.
And I just think, go ahead, Peter. Sorry.
Major League Baseball, for some reason, wants us to have a new stadium in Tampa Bay. That's who's pushing us. The officials in Major League Baseball want us to have a new stadium. And so, naturally, Stu Sternberg, who owns the Tampa Bay Rays, is going along with this. And he first attempted to design one in St. Petersburg, which is supposed to go where Al Lang Stadium is right now. And the people of St. Petersburg stupidly turned it down. And so he had no choice but to search elsewhere. the mayor of St. Petersburg gave him permission to do so. And they picked a place in Ybor City, 14 acres, where they're going to build this absolutely magnificent ballpark that's going to eventually cost $892 million without any notion of who the heck is going to pay for this thing. The Rays said that they would pay $150 million of the $892 million. Now, in Pinellas County, which is where St. Petersburg is, they have $400 million already saved up for the stadium. Pinellas wants this stadium really, really badly. But Sternberg, who is from New York, believes that the bad attendance as a result of the stadium being not in Tampa. So he wants the stadium in Tampa. The question is, will he be able to raise the money to put the stadium in Tampa? And really, quite frankly, nobody knows the answer to that question.
If you guys were betting people, what would you bet on? Peter.
Oh, you want me to go first?
Yeah.
I would bet that they don't raise the money in Tampa, and either they will agree to put the stadium somewhere in Pinellas County or move. Those are the two choices they'll have. Because I don't think that there is any way in the world, after in Miami, the townspeople paid $1 billion for that stadium, only to have the owners of the Florida Marlins get rid of Stanton and several of their other expensive players, so that in this new beautiful, beautiful stadium, and it is a beautiful stadium, they are now drawing crowds of 8,000 and 9,000 people.
Well, Oakland coming back to play a homestand after going 8 games over 500. They're 13 or 14 over.
Yeah, marvel.
They came back last week to play Cleveland, and they drew like 14,000 Friday night, 12,000. There has to be a time when the fans pick it up a little bit. I think it would show an awful lot, both teams' fans, if they could start responding to the way the team is playing. Stadiums be damned. You could play, once the game starts, you're looking between the lines, whether the ambiance of the stadium doesn't suit a fan or not. Reward these teams. They're playing over their heads. They're playing great ball, good young teams, and the fans, if they came out a little bit, it would change the way you're thinking. Maybe the owners would put more than 1/10 of the money to build the stadium, which brings me to the Giants. They built the stadium 10, 15 years ago, totally on their own money.
Yep.
And
they had Barry Bonds to fill it, which was nice.
That's true.
Yeah.
What
I don't understand. Here's what I don't understand. I know why we get the attendance we have in Tampa Bay. When we play the Yankees, for instance, we'll draw 22,000 people, and 11,000 of those people will be Yankee fans. When we play the Red Sox, we'll draw 20,000 people, and 10,000 of those people will be Red Sox fans. And I've got season tickets, so I talk to these people. Do you only come to Red Sox games? Yes. To the Yankee fans, do you only come to the Yankee games? For the most part, the answer is yes. So people come to Florida from other places, and they maintain their allegiance to their original loves. I mean, I've got friends I play softball with who are such crazy New York Mets fans. They listen to the Mets on the radio every night because they've been Mets fans since they were kids. Now, Oakland doesn't have that problem. I truly don't understand why it is the fans in Oakland haven't warmed up to the Oakland ownership. They seem like a nice bunch of people. What's the problem between the ownership in Oakland and the fans? Is it just that they're cheap?
Well, it's twofold. First of all, there's no question that the Oakland Stadium is a dump. It's got that reputation. They're playing across the bay from the Giants, who have a stadium that's an incredible gem. I don't know if you've seen it yet,
Oh, sure. Oh, you can't miss it.
It's beautiful, and
it is.
That's part of it. I got to tell you, the Oakland fan base is terrific. They've got 5,000 loyal, season-holding people who are, green and gold from top to bottom. Mm-hmm. But they never did. They drew very well in the late 80s when they had their little mini dynasty when they were.
Yeah, they had Jose Canseco. They had Mark McGuire.
Right.
That
right.
wonderful team from '89. Yeah.
But they never did well when they had the 5 in a row, 3 championships wrapped around 2 divisions. They never did draw well back in the Campaneris days, Reggie Jackson days. And the Bay Area...
I know they drew well in '81 when Billy was the manager because I was there.
Yes.
Billy Ball was a sensation.
Fans are fickle, too.
Yeah.
They're coming off, the Giants are coming off 3 out of the last 6 years being world champions.
Right.
And there is the uncertainty of a ballpark just as there is where you guys are. 2 or 3 locations being looked at, and in the back of my mind, I think the same thing. If they don't get it settled, they could up and be gone. And I think the fans, first of all, they don't respond well to building the team up, tearing it down for free agents like they've been doing. Sonny Gray, as an example, trading away guys. I think once the shovel is in the ground, things will turn dramatically.
Yeah, probably.
Because the future is what we all look to. But, you don't want to get attached to a team too much in fear, given I'm a New York Giant fan. What can happen? You can be an 11-year-old kid, your whole heart is in it, and all of a sudden, Giants and Dodgers pick up and move and break a whole bunch of kids' hearts.
Ralph,
that could happen
was
again.
1957. Ralph,
yes,
that was 1957. That was lifetimes ago, for crying out loud.
You don't think we should still be thinking about it?
No, I do not think you should be thinking about the Brooklyn Dodgers moving to Los Angeles. No, I don't. I really don't.
Well,
one thing about the Rays, the thing that bothers the people who root for the Rays is we've got a catcher right now by the name of Wilson Ramos, who has made the All-Star team. The guy's a magnificent catcher. He's one of the reasons the pitchers have done so well. And the talk, as soon as Stu Sternberg opens his mouth, is about the prospects that we can get for him. And I was thinking to myself, when I was growing up rooting for Mickey Mantle and Whitey Ford and Yogi Berra, never once did the owners of the Yankees talk about the great prospects that we could get for Yogi Berra, if you know what I mean.
Right.
I mean, nothing really frosts our behinds more than to hear ownership talk about how wonderful it'll be when they trade their star player for some prospect. It just drives us crazy, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Well, I think it's a slap in the face to the fans if you're building a contending ball club or even an interesting ball club, a fun ball club to watch. And then you, at the trading deadline, if they trade Ramos, what are they telling the fans? They're telling the fans they don't care. And
well, it's funny. I had a very interesting conversation with one of the execs of the Rays about Ramos. And his reaction was, look how many games we're behind the Seattle Mariners. It's probably 10 games right now. In his mind, they don't think that our team can catch them. And as a result, if we kept Ramos to the end of the season, then he would become a free agent and we would not get anything back for him. So I said to him, get anything back for him. For crying out loud, sign him for 3 years and pay him $35 million like everybody else does. And I got sort of a chuckle. You know, it's the guy who owns this team only has $3 billion. You know, you've got to, you know, if you care enough about winning, you sign Wilson Ramos for $35 million and you win. If you care more about your bottom line, you trade Wilson Ramos and you get 2 more prospects who may or may not make it 3 years from now.
And how much could Wilson Ramos help develop the present pitching staff?
Oh, my goodness, what he has done for these pitchers. The reason these pitchers are so fabulous is because of Ramos. We had a game today against the Minnesota Twins, and in the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th innings, Ramos was out because he had pulled a leg muscle yesterday, and he wasn't playing. Sucre was the catcher. And I guarantee you, if Ramos had been behind the plate, we would have won this thing going away. But we must have walked 5 or 6 batters in the last 3 innings. And one of our pitchers, Diego Castillo, who I love, balked in a run. It was just something else. Ramos makes all the difference in the world. You keep Ramos, we could get to the wild card this year. I promise you that. You let Ramos go, it'll never happen.
These big money guys who are judging the ball club, they don't take into consideration the intangibles. And that's something that the stats, the new stats, the old stats, they don't take into account. Just what you said, Ramos settling down a pitcher, going out there and knowing what to say, knowing how, because he's worked with the guy all year. He knows what's going on. And there's no price tag you can put on that.
Without a doubt. I'm going to name you. I put it up on my screen so I can name them for you. I'm going to name you a list of rookie pitchers. And I guarantee you who live in San Francisco never heard of one of them. All right, here they are. Jose Alvarado, Diego Castillo, Andrew Kittredge, Adam Kolarek, Jamie Schultz, Ryan Stanek, Hunter Wood, and Ryan Yarborough. Now that's 7 different pitchers, and they're all rookies, and they're all fabulous. And they're fabulous, in my opinion, because of Wilson Ramos.
So now, what effect would that have? That's the unknown, the X factor. What effect would it have to sign the guy, and what negative effect would it have to not sign him and let him go for prospects in the hopes that 6 or 7 years from now you can develop a team to make it? That kind of thinking is what absolutely makes the fan crazy go nuts.
It makes the fans absolutely crazy, and I have to tell you, your Oakland A fans have been driven crazy like this for 20 years.
Right.
Ever since you got rid of McGuire, ever since Canseco left, you've been, dealing with Moneyball. That marvelous book that Lewis wrote. I mean, it's just a spectacular book. But you're not dealing with stars. You're dealing with players who do certain things based on sabermetrics. But unfortunately, and I keep telling the people at the Rays, sabermetrics don't bring the fans into the stadium. And they've been a pitching and defense. This Tampa Bay Rays have been a pitching and defense squad until this year. We scored 19 runs yesterday. We scored 7 runs today. I mean, just fabulous. They're hitting. These new kids are just wonderful. But pitching and defense doesn't draw fans either. We went to the World Series in 1908. And I hate to tell you, 1908 was 10 years ago.
2008.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
1908 was...
Yes, 1908 was the Red Sox. No, 2008, I'm sorry. 2008 was 10 years ago, yes. Yep.
Jack, your response.
Well, I agree with Peter. I think that if they want to keep the team, they keep it in Pinellas County. Tampa, it's not going to happen because I know a lot of the people over here are still upset about Raymond James Stadium.
True.
And it just seems to me like the Rays management doesn't make a commitment to the team or to the fans. It's almost like they want the team to move. I mean, they do a great job bringing in all these young kids and stuff, and they're able to piece together a team. But it just seems to me that they really don't want to spend the money to get them over the hump. And I mean, they've had some terrific teams over there.
The funny thing is, when Sternberg talks about his commitment to Tampa Bay, I mean, and he's a guy I believe. I don't think he's blowing smoke. I think he's genuine in what he says. I mean, he talks about keeping the team in Tampa Bay for the next 50 years. So he talks about that. On the other hand, if Hillsborough County and Tampa do not somehow come up with $750 million to build that stadium, it'll be interesting to see what he does. He's not going to be happy.
Do you think there's a possibility of them going to Montreal?
No, I don't. Montreal is not where they're going. Nobody's going to Montreal. But one thing about the Rays, we had that stadium. We had the Suncoast Dome Stadium was built in 1986. And that sat there empty until 1998 when the Tampa Bay Devil Rays showed up. So that's, 12 years? For those 12 years, we must have had 5 or 6 teams threaten to come here. And then each
Giants
time after they, yes, Giants absolutely were one of them. That every time they threatened to come here, somehow the legislatures in those states managed to pony up for their new ballparks. So obviously one of the things that the Rays ownership certainly will do if somehow Hillsborough doesn't come up with the money for that stadium is they will threaten to move to Las Vegas, Nashville, Memphis, God knows where. So it'll be interesting to see whether they can bludgeon the legislature and the local governments into building them a ballpark.
You're an attorney, Peter. Tell me about eminent domain and how the possibility of that ever coming into our sports horizon.
Well, I mean, they've centered on where they want to put the ballpark in Ybor City, and there doesn't seem to be, much there where people are going to hold them up. Eminent domain means that the government can take the land for some purpose that they need it for. And I suppose if they have to, they'll do that. But I
was talking more eminent domain in terms of the franchises to the different cities. So the threat, so these owners can't
There is no eminent domain.
I know. Is that ever possible that there will be in sports someday?
No. Let me tell you, if Walter O'Malley can take the beloved Brooklyn Dodgers, and we would never talk about this again, but if the beloved Brooklyn Dodgers can leave Brooklyn to go to all the way across the country to go to Los Angeles, any team can go anywhere at any time they want to. Even the Yankees, when they wanted their new stadium, were threatening to go to New Jersey.
Yeah. Hey, before Walter O'Malley, there was Lou Perini with the Boston Braves, and he picked up and went to Milwaukee.
Well, what's interesting is if you have a town with 2 teams, you had the Boston Braves and the Boston Red Sox. A town with 2 teams. The Philadelphia A's and the Philadelphia Phillies, the St. Louis Browns and the St. Louis Cardinals. It made a certain amount of sense for that second team. I mean, the Browns were drawing, I believe, 4,000 fans a game. You're playing 154 games and drawing 4,000 fans a game. You can certainly understand why Bill Veeck would want to take the St. Louis Browns and move them to Baltimore. It makes a certain
sense. Hey, listen, Brooklyn was the most profitable team in the National League when they moved to L.A., so that was just pure overdue in terms of greed.
Yeah, well, it was more than greed, though. It was also racism. O'Malley would drive around Brooklyn and see a lot of African-American people, and it would make him crazy. The owner of the Giants, Stoneham, when he moved, he told me he was going to Minneapolis because it was the whitest place he could think of. This was back in the 50s, an incredibly racist part of our time, and they were moving to go places. They built the Dodger
Owners
Stadium
with Jackie Robinson and Willie Mays on their rosters can say that.
Yeah.
It's sickening.
Oh, it's sickening, all right. Absolutely sickening. You understand that in order to get to the ballpark in Los Angeles, you've got to be able to drive. So who doesn't get to go to the ball games? The people who can't afford a car. Those were the Hispanics and the African Americans. There was some thinking behind all this.
Well, interestingly enough, the Los Angeles Dodgers cater to the Hispanic folks. And
well, it's now 2000 and whatever the heck we are, 2018. Hopefully, we're smarter. We've become a smarter country than we were then.
Well, hopefully we
despite
haven't
our
been
president,
set back permanently, right?
Yeah.
This asshole.
We can take our country back.
Well, we talked sports a little bit, and it got me away from that sort of thinking for a
yeah, I know
hour.
I know
right.
it. It's a good thing to do. That's what sports does. Sports brings people together. That's what I love about
Who was
sports.
it? Was it Howard Cosell says it's the candy store of life, of journalism and this, that, and the other.
Well, if it wasn't, it should have been. I miss Howard Cosell. Boy, I'll tell you what, Howard Cosell would be a wonderful voice today.
Wouldn't he be a great guest on any podcast going?
My. Well, no, he would never be your guest. He would be the host.
No, you're absolutely right.
Howard was never a guest. Howard was never a guest ever. He was.
There's some great stuff on YouTube. Billy Crystal talks about.
Oh, the best. I spent 2 hours in one of my sports classes talking about Howard Cosell and Roone Arledge, the two of them who made television sports so important. Roone Arledge was a genius. And if it hadn't been for Roone Arledge, Howard Cosell never would have had a career. Nobody else would have understood Howard Cosell's brilliance and importance, and they would have jerked him off the air after 6 months. But Roone Arledge understood, and he went to Howard and said, you just be Howard, and I'll take care of your critics.
Well, I remember when it was a sport to get bricks and old TVs. They'd have them in bars and what have you. And Howard would come on, and patrons would throw bricks at the TV. He was just above the game. He was, you'd put on the game, listen to Howard, and then realize there's a game going on as well. He was just tremendous.
He was absolutely fascinating. He made Monday Night Football, along with Don Meredith and Frank Gifford.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just Howard had his most fascinating radio shows. Were Speaking of Sports was one of his shows, and he had another show which was Speaking of Everything. He was very widely read. He was a brilliant man, and I would go on his show as a guest, and the show would go by. It would be an hour show, and it would go by like it was a minute. I mean, just to sit and talk to Howard was just such a wonderful opportunity for anybody.
Just to sit and talk to Peter Golenbock is an opportunity, a wonderful opportunity for me and Jack Degraw, who we're going to turn this in for a second to a Ask Peter Golenbock. And I wonder, as Jack is someone who's read Peter since 1974, you're a Yankee fan. Let's start with Dynasty. Was that pretty damn cool when Peter's book came out? And I'm not even a Yankee fan.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I got the book, it was September of 1974, and the Yankees were playing in Shea, and they had a 1.5 game lead, and the Orioles come in and swept them, and that was the end of the Yankees for the year. But, I mean, it was just a tremendous book to read about all the old-timers and stuff. I mean, I started following baseball in the early 60s, so I never had the pleasure to see Allie Reynolds play and Hank Bauer and Gene Woodling and all these guys, but I could really appreciate when Peter talked to them and interviewed them, and you get to know them as people, because the people in baseball for the most part are terrific human beings.
They certainly are.
No question. The fun you had, Peter. We've talked about this. So
the fun I had. You just have no idea. And it's timing. It all has to do with timing. When I went to Marty Appel, who was the assistant PR guy, and told him I wanted to write this book, and could I come to the Yankees and do my research there? And he said, absolutely, come, please come. I guarantee you, I could have gone to any other baseball team. They would have said, no, are you kidding me? No, you can't come and be with us. But I came to the Yankee offices there in the fall of 1973, and they treated me like I was one of them. I would answer the phone, New York Yankees, when they were out to lunch or something like that. It was hilarious.
Oh, wow.
And it was wonderful. They gave me all the cooperation I could possibly get. They gave me the telephone numbers and the addresses of all the former Yankees. Michael Burke, who was the president of the Yankees at the time, wrote me this magnificent letter saying, to whom it may concern, Peter Golenbock is going to be coming your way. Please talk to him, blah, 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 blah. And who gets treated like that? Nobody. It was magical, the whole thing. I drove 30,000 miles, or flew or drove or took the bus or however I went. 30,000 miles. Took me 3 years to do. It was before computers. I still have all those interviews. I still have all those fabulous interviews. I mean,
all the tapes and everything?
Yeah, I still have all the tapes of all. I have the tapes of all my books. I've got them all. The Yankees, the Brooklyn Dodgers, the Cardinals, and Browns, the Cubs, the Mets. I've got hundreds and hundreds of these taped interviews, which, I should do something with them because they're very, very special.
Well, actually, you did do something with them. You transcribed them into...
Yeah, I did. I transcribed them.
That was a pretty good deed right there.
That was pretty good. Yes, it was.
Yeah.
But,
what would you like to ask Peter?
Yeah.
Jack?
I would like to ask you, Peter, about I'm a Knicks fan. And,
yes.
We all know how the Knicks have been since forever. But my favorite player was Bill Bradley. So I'd like, could you share some memories of Bradley and DeBusschere and all those great teams?
I'd be glad to. I went to Dartmouth College. I was a class of 67. Bill Bradley was the class of 65. So when I was a sophomore, Bradley was a senior. I was on the staff of the Dartmouth, and we had just a terrible, terrible team. I think our record was 4-21. But a couple of our players had gotten hurt, and so I went to Doggy Julian, who was our coach, and I said, Doggy, you've got 9 players. You really could use 10 for practice. I played high school ball. How about letting me, suit up during practice? I'll be your 10th player during practice. He let me do it, which was fantastic. What a fabulous opportunity. Doggy Julian had led Bob Cousy and Holy Cross University to a college championship in 1950. So Doggy Julian was really a spectacular coach, though this particular year he was way over the hill and our players were fairly terrible. But it gave me an opportunity to play 2 games against Bill Bradley. They beat us 106-46, and they beat us 93-33. I mean, they just cleaned our clock. And Bill Bradley was about the best college basketball player I ever saw. The other one was Pete Maravich. I would go to Madison Square Garden while I was in law school and see Maravich every time he came to Madison Square Garden. And he would score, 40, 45 points. And you've never seen another player like him. But in college, Bradley was his own spectacular self because he had an amazing shot. I mean, the guy almost never missed. He had a vertical leap of about 2 inches, and yet he would get, 6 or 7 rebounds a game. He was just a spectacular, spectacular basketball player. So I had the opportunity to go to Madison Square Garden and see Bill Bradley play in his very, very, very first game with the Knicks. I believe it was the middle of the schedule. He was a Rhodes Scholar, so he didn't start at the beginning of the season. And he came and went into the game against the Detroit Pistons, his very first game, and he scored 8 or 9 points. And it was just, something magical to be able to sit in Madison Square Garden and watch Bill Bradley play pro ball.
Someone you played against. That's pretty cool.
Well, more cool than that, I had a friend in law school by the name of Sally Gold. And Sally Gold had gone to North Dakota University. And she was a very close friend of Phil Jackson.
Phil Jackson.
Yeah. So Sally said to me, you and Phil ought to become friends. And I said, well, that would be great. And she actually introduced us, and we were friends from 1969 to 1974. We were good friends for about 5 years. And as you know, the Knicks won their championships in 1970 and 1973. So I had a press pass from the Stamford Advocate. I was from Stamford, Connecticut. So I had the opportunity to go into the locker rooms with the Knicks whenever I wanted to and hang out with Phil and Bill Bradley and
Bowman.
Willis Reed and all these wonderful people. And again, that was a very, very special team because it was a team. It was amazing. Clyde was there, and the kid they got from Baltimore was so spectacular.
Earl Monroe.
Earl
Monroe.
Just
let's give a bibliography of that year. There was a book written, "The Miracle on 34th Street," or the
Miracle. I think that's the name of it. Yes.
Greenspan.
Yeah, Phil Berger.
Phil Berger.
Yeah,
I knew Phil was a wonderful, wonderful person and a wonderful writer. Yeah.
Another close friend of Phil Jackson's, who was hurt most of those early championship seasons. He had a bad back.
He did have a bad back, but he played. Despite his bad back, he played. And he was, it's funny, as well as I knew him, we were like brothers. We were so close. It never occurred to me that this guy was going to be the greatest basketball coach in the history of the NBA. It's funny. It's just, you don't know what's inside somebody's head. These professional basketball players have so much basketball knowledge. It's just mind-blowing.
But isn't it interesting that he made his mark by giving his players books, inspirational books, books that he thought would help the individual player. And I've read accounts that him bringing the team together by giving them a common basis of philosophy was what was responsible. He's a learned guy.
He is a learned guy, and I would say that Michael Jordan also had something to do with it.
Yeah, right. It didn't hurt. And as bad, Scottie Pippen does not get the credit for. It was that one time he didn't come into the game. I remember his reputation took a hit with that. I can't remember the circumstances.
No, you're right. I can't either. But to win a championship, you need 5 guys, and every one of those 5 guys has got to play a role. And Scottie was certainly the number 2 guy on that team. I don't think there's any question about that.
And a guy who's now coaching the Warriors, Steve Kerr.
I got to know Steve Kerr. Steve Kerr is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant man. And I'll tell you what, the guy could really shoot, too. Boy, what a ball player.
Three-pointers? Wow.
He was fantastic.
Yeah.
No, I know it.
I think if it weren't for baseball, basketball would have been your first love, Peter.
Well, I played basketball all through, my childhood. I mean, that's the thing I played more than anything else was basketball. The problem was I was 12 years old and I was 5'10", and I was the center, and I was sure that I was going to be 6'7", and unfortunately I never grew one more inch the rest of my life, and so that was it for my basketball career. I did play some high school ball, but yeah, no, I love basketball. It was great.
All right. Hey, let's get to know you a little bit, Jack Degraw. Did you play ball when you were a kid?
Well, that's all I've ever done is play ball. I've been playing my whole life. I still play to this day. I mean, I've shot a basketball every day for like 50 years. So
that's wonderful. That's
wow.
Wonderful.
I go up to the local park and I shoot hoops, and they got a batting cage and I got a tee. I hit the ball, and I play tennis all the time. So, I've always loved sports, and that's pretty much my whole life. And just getting back to the Knicks, I think the 69-70 Knicks was the first team, the whole team almost wrote a book. I remember Phil Jackson, DeBusschere, Bradley, Red Holtzman, Willis Reed, and I remember Phil Jackson's book was Maverick. And he also had a book when they took pictures when, Phil 69-70, he had a book. Willis Reed was on the cover the year they beat the Lakers in 7 games, and Phil Jackson had something to do with that.
I thought Bradley's book was something like A Sense of Where You Are.
Well, but that was the book about
Bradley.
That
was college, yep.
Yeah, that was about Bradley. That was by that magnificent writer who usually didn't write about sports. He usually wrote about fishing or something else, and I wish the heck I could remember his name. Magnificent writer. I've got the book on myself
Sense of Where
here.
You Are.
A Sense of Where You Are was the name of the book about Bill Bradley, and it was just this stupendous analysis of who he was and why he was so fabulous. Yeah.
Would you speak to his politics? He was very close to getting a nomination, and he had some.
He was in the Senate.
Problems.
He was a senator from New York. He was a senator.
He had some aspirations to get presidential.
He did. His problem was that he was a terrible public speaker. That was his problem. He had real difficulty talking off the cuff, and he sounded like a professor. He sounded very pedantic when he talked, and so his attempt to be president never really got off the ground. But he was a Democrat, certainly was that, even though I think his father was the president of a bank in St. Louis, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, I do remember hearing.
And so I think it's kind of interesting that the guy who was the son of the president of the bank would be a Democrat. It's very, very interesting.
From a border state as well.
Well, I remember a comment. Somebody asked Red Auerbach if Bill Bradley would have made a good president, and Red said, no, he's too honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there was a character, Red Auerbach. Wow.
Well, he was a magnificent coach. He was just tremendous. Yeah. Interesting that there are two Reds. The Celtics had a red, the Knicks had a red.
Right, and two Brooklyn Jews.
Yeah, without a doubt. And they both were great players, too, both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Holtzman played on the original Celtics.
He did. Yes.
Yeah.
The original.
And Red Auerbach made some moves. He was the first to have 5 black players playing on the same team, on the same starting lineup at one time. We're old enough to remember when there was such a strict quota in the NBA that it was 2 blacks on a team and that was it.
Well, it took Boston quite a long time to accept Bill Russell as a Bostonian. they would write racist stuff on his door.
Oh, worse than that. They treated him very poorly.
No, most definitely. Boston was a tough place for African Americans for a long, long time. No two ways about it. Yeah.
We had on a different show on this network this morning, Al Downing, the great pitcher.
Sweet man, Al Downing. Lovely guy.
Terrific human being.
Yeah.
Good guy.
We had him on, and he mentioned something in passing that I didn't pick up on. When he was a kid, he was a Boston Red Sox fan growing up.
Yeah.
And I wonder, given that the Red Sox was so late in integrating, and I'm going to talk to him about it the next time he's on.
Okay.
Had to be discouraging as a black kid growing up, rooting for the Boston Red Sox, and but Al Downing is someone who does not look at life with color. Through an amazing guy, Al Downing. You remember anything about Peter when you interviewed him? Anything that stands out?
I just remembered how honest he was and how interesting he was. He was not a controversial person at all. It's tough enough to be African American in America just to begin with. But, if you're an athlete and you're playing in the minors, you saw the movie 42 where they were screaming all that stuff at Jackie. I don't care who you were. They were screaming all that stuff at Al Downing too.
Mm-hmm. But
every other African American player.
He grew up in Trenton, New Jersey.
Trenton. He's a Trentonite, yes.
With Al Clark, the former umpire, and George Case. And we had all three of them on this morning on this network.
Wonderful. That sounds like a wonderful show.
That was a good show.
Right.
Listen, guys, unless you have anything else to ask Peter, Jack Degraw, we're going to wrap it up. Anything in closing that you'd like to know?
Well, just one thing. I mean, the Boston Bruins had a black hockey player before the Boston Red Sox had a black baseball player.
Willie O'Ree.
Yeah.
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 Well, when Jackie Robinson had his tryout with the Red Sox, they did that because the politicians demanded it. And the three people who were there, one of them was Yawkey, one of them was Joe Cronin, and one of them was the manager. And one of those people yelled out, "Get that N-word off the field." This was in 1946, and this was America in 1946. Yawkey had a plantation in South Carolina. He had people who worked on his plantation for, pennies a day. He was not somebody who was going to bring an African American up to the Boston Red Sox. He just wasn't going to do it. And when the pressure became so great, when he finally did it, he brought up a bench guy. Pumpsy Green was a bench guy. I interviewed Pumpsy. Pumpsy was just, thrilled to be making the $6,000 a year as a Boston Red Sox because he would make more money than whatever he was doing, in his other life.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, but it was not the sort of thing. The Red Sox could have had, they all could have had. They could have Mays. They could have had Hank Aaron. They could have had Ernie Banks. Any of these teams could have had those people. They didn't want them. And they suffered. They suffered for 20 years because of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what a Jackie Robinson would have done playing with Ted Williams?
I found a letter in the New York Yankees archives saying that the Yankees ought to get this guy W. Mays, who's playing at Birmingham. And the Yankees, who were as racist as anybody else in 1945, 46, 47, they let it go.
Yeah.
They could have had Mantle and Mays in the same outfield. Would have been amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mantle, Mays,
all right, folks.
and
Have a great week.
Thank you, gentlemen.
This was a lot of fun. A pleasure meeting you, Jack.
Well, thanks, Peter, and keep writing those books. I love reading them.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Take care.
Be well, gentlemen,
Bye-bye.
and thank you, everybody, for listening. The show is Golenbock University. The network is the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And thank you again for listening. We'll see you next week. Adios.